On this episode of the podcast, I've got BJJ black belt and Indiana Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy owner and head coach, James Clingerman. James has been doing jiu-jitsu for about 20 years. He started way back in the day. He's been running awesome tournaments in the area, the EGO or the EGO, which is the Extreme Grappling Open, which is the first tournament I ever did, and just runs a great tournament. Super tough school. We get into his kind of jiu-jitsu, his start in jiu-jitsu, his competition, the injuries, because he's dealt with some really major stuff that not a lot of people will come back from, but he has come back and he still trains and competes regularly and competes at a high level. It's just really amazing to talk to somebody that's been through so much and still, is progressing in jiu-jitsu and has used jiu-jitsu as such a powerful tool to, continue to grow. And it's just awesome to talk to him about everything from running tournaments to competing to what he thinks about EBI rules and just where he sees tournaments changing and progressing. And I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. James was great to talk to and super nice guy to have on the podcast. So hope you guys enjoy it.
You are now listening to the Jiu-Jitsu Therapist Podcast.
Thank you for hanging out. You have sauna in your house?
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you cutting weight?
No, I'm just a little quiet. It's down in the basement, so it's quiet down here.
Yeah, I was actually going to get a sauna myself. My parents have one at their house. So
yeah. Nice.
Have you researched anything as far as benefits of sauna? I'm just curious.
Just a little bit. Like it's an infrared. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's an infrared sauna. Actually, I got it super cheap. It's like I don't know if you can really see it, but
yeah.
It's like a big, 5-person sauna.
Which is huge.
So it's pretty nice, but I got it for $1,800.
How long does it take to heat up?
It takes a good 40 minutes or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my wife's big into, all this healthy stuff, and she's like, we listen to Joe Rogan, all this other shit, and they talk about heat shock proteins and stuff, and cold shock proteins supposed to fight off diseases. I'm like, well, it makes sense why people are doing it for ever, I guess.
Oh yeah. I just listened to I can't remember who it was, somebody on Tim Ferriss, and she talked a lot about the heat shock proteins and
yeah.
But yeah, I've liked saunas since I was a little kid. I just always wanted one. I'm weird, and I've never done the ice for recovery thing. I've always done heat, and
really?
And now it's acceptable. Now they're like, oh yeah, it should be heat, not ice. So
they're saying a lot in Western medicine. So I'm a physical therapist, so they obviously do doctors here in the States ice. After a sprained ankle or ice immediately after activity. But my wife's a massage therapist, and she works with some acupuncturists, and they talk about heat. If you sprain your ankle, put heat on it. And I'm like,
yeah.
I think there's somewhere in between doing both. I think doing a little bit of both is might be the thing to do. I don't know.
Yeah. So, I'll tell you, man, my chiropractor probably about 12 years ago was he goes, man, all the research is pointing to heat. He said, he goes, your body's natural reaction to injury is to heat it and inflammation, heat and inflammation.
Right.
So you go to a doctor and they're like, yeah, we got to take these anti-inflammatories. We've got to ice it. They kill your body's first two responses to injury, and then it doesn't heal, and it doesn't heal, and it doesn't heal. And then you're like, oh, I've got to go to a surgeon. And then you go to a surgeon, but he was like, all the research is pointing to heat. And then another Tim Ferriss podcast, the guy was talking about, he's like, yeah, we get better results with heat after a couple of weeks than we do with ice after years, and then, they just started publishing all this stuff oh yeah, we've been wrong forever. We need to heat stuff now. And
well, I usually, I feel combination's good. If I have somebody that's an acute injury, meaning 48 to 72 hours, you'll apply ice. And since you're not keeping ice on there forever, you're just putting ice on there, for 15, 20 minutes, getting some of that inflammation out, and then you're actually getting more perfusion of blood, fresh. You're trying to get basically stagnant blood out,
right,
and then fresh blood in. So that's because I think after the first 72 hours or so, you want to probably work on heat. I think heat's probably even a better option.
Yeah.
So,
And like I've done like some heat ice alternation for like ribs and stuff. Anything with like cartilage, where it doesn't get blood flow, like it makes sense to like really,
right, yeah, like
really
they do
pump that
their
up.
ankles.
But I
actually
don't like
feel
being
blood.
cold. Like I don't want to be cold ever. Like
Yeah.
I just hate it. So I lean toward heat anyway. Like
Have you heard of Wim Hof?
no.
That guy that's like that does ice immersion.
Okay.
He's got like this thing called the Wim Hof method, and basically he teaches people how to climb Mount Everest or whatever, like in just shorts
Okay.
and no shirt, and it's crazy. Like he does like a breathing thing, like a meditation and like cold immersion, and like, it's supposed to fight off disease. It's crazy, but
Yeah. Somebody was telling me about him, but I've not like seen him or anything like that.
Yeah, he's got a home. Like I've researched, he's got this home program where I actually do like. Not ice baths, but like cold showers.
Yeah.
And like you just kind of learn the breathing stuff, and then you take these cold showers, and so I don't know, man. There's got to be. I always say it. There's got to be like, there's a middle ground for everything for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, man, I don't know if you know, I've actually competed at a bunch of your tournaments.
Yep.
So thanks for that. My first tournament was actually an ego. In Louisville, I don't know when it was. I've been training since 07.
Okay.
08. So it was like my first. I was a white belt, and it was crazy.
Have you been with Chewy the whole time?
Yeah, well, no, I started a Highlander actually.
Okay.
Mike Yanez. So
Yeah.
I was out there for a couple years until that closed down. So I was there, and I went to like the Cage Infernos, and I saw Taz and all those guys just fighting, and I was like, man, these guys are awesome. And I had a buddy that did some kind of wrestling class out there or something, so I just decided to go out there one day, and I started training there. And I never really met Chewy. I saw him fight like at a casino once or something, but that was it. So when our gym closed down, we moved to they got in touch with Derek, and they got some pretty good, a bunch of us switched over to Derby City, so that's where I've been since really
nice.
I was a green belt when I got my green belt under Mike, and then I went back to white and ended up, I'm a brown belt now under Chewy. So
nice.
Yeah, it's been, man, I kind of wanted to, I know we're going backwards in all kinds of different order, but as far as the tournament scene now, like, I mean, you've been doing it forever. Like, what do you see with all these super fights and matches and like what's the appeal to a lot of these people?
It's a good question. I don't know. It's the thing is, like, and I was talking about this with some guys the other day, like a lot of people ask for all these unified rules and everything, and they want to be the IBJJF, and then half the other people want some other unified rules because they don't like the IBJJF, or they like the rule set but they don't like the organization. And so they're going to like the EBI rules, which I personally don't care for at all. I think it allows for way too much stalling. But I'm a big fan of like just different tournaments. You know what I mean? Like different rule sets. Like if you and I fight under one rule set 10 times and you're better at that rule set, you win all 10. But if we fight under 10 different rule sets, then, that's maybe we go 5-5. Or
Why do you feel EBI would, and I've had like Joe Bays on my podcast because he's done EBI a couple times, leg lock guy. And he prefers those rules. He thinks that it's more exciting. Like I kind of like the fight to win format where it's I don't think they do points, but they have judges' decision for a decision.
Yeah, 3 judges
and submission, and they allow slams, which I think is kind of interesting because it keeps it honest. I feel like it, you can't sell out for certain positions. So
yeah, they don't allow they allow slams, but not reaping. Like the fight to win, they DQ'd a guy. One of the last ones I watched, the black belts, the guy accidentally reaped and like corrected it right away. It was like, oh, sorry. Went back to like, threw the other leg over, and they're like, nope, it's over. You're done.
Why do you feel that a lot of tournaments outlaw that?
I have no idea. I really don't. Like, because IBJJF outlaws it, right? Like,
well, but they also outlaw slams, and they allow slams at fight to win.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, people are afraid of like this crazy, like some invisible leg lock where, I reap somebody's leg and they die. Like that's not how it happens, man. Like when I was a white belt and a blue belt, like there was no such thing as, there was no term for reaping the leg. Like that's how you do a leg lock.
Right.
It was
bringing
just
your leg basically across the body.
You bring the leg across the body because now they can't roll. It bends the knee. Like it does all the stuff it's supposed to do to lock somebody's leg.
Right.
And, man, I was probably like a purple or a brown belt before I even heard of that rule. And I was like, what is this? What do you mean no reaping? Like, I had to ask what it was. I was like, what do you mean reap? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I always use the analogy, like, it's like saying you can't throw your leg over the head on an armbar because you might crank the neck. Like, I've never in my life seen anyone get hurt from a leg reap, ever. Like, it's never happened.
That's what I was going to ask.
I've never heard anybody else ever see it happen. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you reap and you go for a heel hook. The heel hook does the damage, but the reap doesn't do damage. Like, nobody's ever been hurt from that, ever.
What have you seen, like, in your tournament as far as injuries go? Is there anything that you see a lot of?
No, never. We allow reaping.
But is there, like, as far as certain injuries, I mean, without reaping involved, like, what do you see?
Off the top of my head, like, bad, I mean, there's always little sprains and strains.
Right.
But I had a guy dislocate his elbow once.
Okay.
He had, there was a...
Nobody's going to do your tournaments now because it's going to be horrific injuries.
Yeah. But, like, I mean, we've been running since 2004, and there's never been a lot of injuries. I mean, obviously, like, we had a guy a couple years back. The kid kind of jumped into a triangle, and he tried to pass, like, while still standing, and he slammed the kid.
Yeah.
And broke his collarbone.
Oh, well, yeah.
And the referee was like, nope, it's legit. Like, the guy, he was passing guard. So we watched the video, and I was like, it wasn't intentional, but it was a slam, so he's DQ'd.
Gotcha.
But it was, I mean, stuff like that happens anywhere, but... Yeah, like I said, we've been allowing reaps since 2004, and we've run 3 to 6 tournaments every single year, and never have we had an injury from a knee reap.
Yeah.
We had one guy complain about it in the middle of a match because he refused to, watch the rules video or be present during the rules that we go over every single tournament.
Right.
And so he flipped out when the kid reaped him, and the ref didn't do anything. But we've never had an injury like that. And like I said, I've never seen one. I've been in jiu-jitsu.
I would say, as far as your gym goes, do you guys allow all submissions at all belts? I'm curious. Another question you get often, and do you all allow heel hooks for white belts?
As far as training goes, man, I'm real iffy on heel hooks, especially in the gi.
Okay.
Only because when the gi, you can get tangled. It does make it harder to escape them. When I compete, no gi, I'm absolutely fine with heel hooks, with all the submissions. I don't want my white belts going for them. Higher level blues, kind of a catch and release type scenario, where they catch it and they don't really try to finish it. But yeah, overall, man, like, guys aren't doing a lot of heel hooks in the gym unless, we all know them. I teach heel hooks, knee bars, all that stuff to white belts. Like, it's in my blue belt curriculum. I learned it when I was a white belt. So, but yeah, we don't, like, I pretty much... White belts, no heel hooks ever.
Gotcha.
And then, once they get blue and they're, then we can go, okay, let's start allowing you to attack them. And, because at blue belt, you're going to start entering some tournaments that you're going to be doing advanced division, stuff like that. If guys go to Naga, like, I think, like, 4-year-old kids are allowed to heel hook
really?
At Naga or whatever. No, I'm exaggerating, but I'm pretty sure all adult divisions are allowed hooks and stuff, like, even at a beginner level. I honestly
feel like the kids at Fight to Win, I don't know if there's any, I don't know what I feel like they go for legs or allow legs or.
Yeah, I know, like,
EBI they do.
That young girl got heel hooked at EBI, so.
Right. Yeah. I mean, do you, I wanted to go back as far as the EBI rules, like, why do you feel, number one, it's gotten so much popularity, and number two, why do you feel like there's a lot of stalling based on the rules?
I think a couple guys have figured out, hey, I can't beat this guy, so I'm gonna just stall and hang out for 10 minutes and force it in overtime and try to win. If you look at who was it, Gio beat Eddie Cummings, that's exactly what he did. He nullified the leg lock game. He stalled. He did absolutely zero offense. Didn't try to win the match. He just waited to overtime, and he tried to win in overtime. And he did, So you can technically beat a guy that's way better than you, just in escaping, you know, I mean, at that point you're almost getting into a scenario of luck. You know, I always say there's no luck in jiu-jitsu, but if you just run from me for 10 minutes and then now, like, you get to start in an armbar, like if you get me in an armbar a little quicker than I get you in an armbar, then that's almost a lucky scenario because you were given something that you didn't earn.
Yeah,
you didn't earn my back. You didn't earn that armbar. You were given that.
I have a little bit of a problem, and this could be, you know, my own fault, but like I did IBJJF in, I think it was Charlotte. Was it Charlotte? It was Atlanta. It was Atlanta, and
okay, yeah.
I was doing like the open brown belt open, and the guy pulled guard on me, and he basically held me in guard the entire time. Like I was starting to sell out for stuff, but he ended up winning on advantage. And my buddy went against him beforehand, and they end up going. He was anticipating the guy pulling guard, so he took him down, and they gave him points. But then they gave my buddy stalling, or they gave the other guy 2 points because they said my friend was stalling.
Yeah,
and he was trying to pass, and the guy was just basically just reaching in the collar, just keeping you busy. And all he did was hold. I mean, he was basically shaking his hands out because he was gripping my collar so hard, you know. And I lost on advantage.
Yeah.
Like. That kind of bothers me too. I mean, that can be kind of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I've seen that so many times. IBJJF especially, where the bottom guy gets to just stall, and it's like 100% on the top guy to pass.
Right.
And you know, and literally almost every single time, it's the bottom guy holding on, doing absolutely zero. The top guy trying with everything he's got to pass the guard, and the referee is awarding the bottom guy, or you know, is calling the bottom guy for stalling and giving him penalties. And I think one time my wife actually at No Gi Pans, a girl did that to her. And I mean, she like literally for 5 minutes, like almost tore this girl's pants off trying to get out of her guard. And the girl like refused to do anything other than lock guard and hold her down. And the referee actually awarded my wife the win. And I was like, holy crap, congratulations, ref. You actually picked a match right for once. And, you know, it was crazy. But yeah, like other than that, I don't think I've ever seen it happen where the bottom guy just blatantly stalls and they penalize him for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of on me because that guy did put me where he wanted me to be. You know, he put me in his guard, and I guess I should have. I mean, I guess that's where I got to work on my game. I guess you know, getting out of that position, but. You know, for the bottom guy, it is advantageous. It can be a dangerous position for sure. You know, people have excellent guards, close guards, but
he's got to attack with it, you know. And you know, like jiu-jitsu, I always say the jiu-jitsu point system is based on self-defense. I mean, really, there's not really a like, you know, like karate, I can almost hit you and get a point. You know, taekwondo, I can kind of touch you just a little bit and get a point. But in jiu-jitsu, you know, my goal in a self-defense scenario is take the fight to the ground. Dominate the position where I can effectively attack without being attacked, and I end the fight, right? So if I'm on bottom, yes, I want to be in guard, but I have to do something with that. I have to sweep. I have to arm lock. I have to leg lock. I have to choke. In a self-defense scenario, the guy on top can punch.
Right.
So laying there and holding is the worst idea, you know? So, you know, kind of if you just stick to the self-defense aspect of jiu-jitsu and the point system that was designed for self-defense, then locking your guard up and using closed guard and not doing anything with it goes against that, and the bottom guy should be penalized every single time.
What do you think about like how the sport, you know, it actually is, you know, going more towards a sport with a lot of different moves or positions that aren't really, you know, self-defense based or oriented, like, you know, going inverted or berimbolo type positions? I mean, I guess those could be used in a self-defense setting, but not. Yeah. I mean, they're not ideal.
Right. So I always say this, like, I can walk out and I can berimbolo the average guy off the street while he's trying to murder me, and I'm going to berimbolo him very successfully with ease, and then I'm going to do whatever I want.
Okay.
Right? So with jiu-jitsu comes like that ability to pretty much control another human being who doesn't know jiu-jitsu, and it's like magic.
Right.
Like, they don't know what's happening. You can completely predict their every single move and not worry about it. So, you know, the argument of like, oh, the berimbolos don't work, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but, you know, my basic white belt jiu-jitsu is going to work on your average street fighter, right? I'm going to do a real simple takedown. I'm going to mount him. I'm going to punch him. I'm going to freaking take his back and rear naked choke him. Like, if you get in a street fight 99% of the time, unless the guy is actually trained, a 6-month white belt is going to handle him. You know what I mean? Yeah. The barambolos and all these advanced moves are for guys that know jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Like, if I get in a street fight, and granted, I'm a black belt. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 20 years. Like, if I get in a street fight and I go for an armbar, the guy's not getting out. I don't need like 20 counters for when this guy escapes the armbar. He's not going to get out of the armbar, you know? He doesn't have any training. If I go for a rear naked choke, the guy goes unconscious. Like, there's no need to go beyond like that little tiny bit of, you know, like we'll say blue belt even. Like blue belt jiu-jitsu, blue belt, you've probably been trained about a year, 18 months, 2 years, something like that. You've got a pretty good idea of how to handle a normal guy that has never trained before with very, very, very basic jiu-jitsu. And then as you go, you develop that ability to go, well, what if I wanted to drop on my back and barambolo somebody, because why not? You know, I got in an altercation recently, and, you know, the guy was probably 80 pounds heavier than me. I wrist locked him. Like, I freaking Steven Seagal wrist locked this dude while we're standing because I could, you know, and I was laughing while I was
doing it. Did he know who you were?
So that's actually how it started. So, he actually pointed his finger in my face and said, "I know who you are, Kung Fu Master."
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, cool, guess whose hand is getting turned behind their back? It was a stupid scenario. The guy was started a fight. He had actually already been involved in a fight at a charity event.
Oh, that's fun.
So he got put out real quick. But, you know, it was just fun. I was like, I'm going to wrist lock you and move you around and laugh at you. And
yeah.
I think I threw him, and then I knee on bellied, and then I put him on his belly again, wrapped his hands up behind his back. You know, it was just so unbelievably easy. And he was big. Like, he was, you know, like I said, probably 80 pounds bigger than me, and like big hands. And I'm like, man, like, as I'm like laughing, I'm trying to make sure that his hand doesn't come loose. I'm like, okay, if he gets away from me, like, this is going to escalate.
Yeah. And
not in his favor. It's going to get real ugly. Like, right now I'm cool, but the hand comes free. Like, playtime's over, you know?
So have you had any other altercations besides that one? Is that kind of
very few, man.
Very
like,
few.
A guy punched me at a concert recently, and, you know, I didn't do anything. It was just, yeah, pretty recently. It was, I mean, within the past year.
What kind of concert was it? That might be. If it was a country concert, man,
No, it was I don't listen to country. It was Corrosion of Conformity and Clutch.
Yeah.
And it was just a misunderstanding. Like, he thought I was doing something I wasn't doing, and it was funny because, like, the whole show, like, me and this dude had been, like, chit-chatting, like, super cool, and then he just kind of freaking smoked me, and I think when I didn't fall down, he didn't know what to do. He just like, oh.
So he like punched you just for.
So it was stupid. Like, I was the kickboxing coach at my academy, like, Clutch is like his favorite band, and he had gotten a shard of metal in his eye. He's an electrician. Okay. He gotten a shard of metal in his eye, nothing major, but, you know, put him out of teaching that night and going to the concert. And so I was sending him pictures and video. And then there was some drunk guy that the security was throwing out. So I went to take a picture of it, and somehow my flash came on. Like, I had, you know, very specifically turned my flash off, and my flash came on. Well, you know, it's a phone, so it's not like a flash. It's like the light just lights up.
Right.
And so I didn't want to, you know, put it in the security guard's face, so I pulled it down. And as I pulled it down, it took a picture. And I looked at it, and it was like, I mean, just like the most perfect shot of this girl's cleavage. Of his girlfriend, right? And she saw it happen. She knew exactly what happened. I was like, we kind of laughed about it, and I deleted it. And, you know, we're laughing, and he was laughing, and he's like, what happened? I missed it, and, you know, and so I told the story, and, like, he had been drinking, and I've never had a drop of alcohol my entire life, like, ever. So, really? You know, I'm completely clear-headed.
I'm sitting here drinking beer right now. No alcohol.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm clear-headed, and I'm trying to explain to him what happened, and, like, I don't know, he wasn't getting it, and then he just got mad and, like, just punched me. And then when I kind of laughed, because I wasn't laughing at him hitting me, I was laughing at the scenario.
Yeah.
And he just like started like, all these people are with me. We're going to kill you. And then he said he was going to stab me. And I'm like, okay.
He's going to stab you.
Yeah, he told me he's going to stab me. So I go in, you know, I get in. I'm like head on temple, hand on wrist, hand on elbow, watching his free hand. Like, you know, I'm like knife defense protocol #1. And so, and I'm like, you know, I'm trying to calm him down. And finally he just like turns his back. And his girlfriend, he leans over and says something to her, probably about, you know, how he's about to beat me up. And his girlfriend, she goes, the guy bumped him. And so whatever reason, he understood that. He understood the guy bumped him, right? So he turns around and he's like, oh, bro, the guy bumped you? And I'm like, okay, he obviously understands this, so I'll go with that, right? Yeah. Not what happened, but I was like, yeah, man, I tried to tell you it's an accident. And he's like, oh, bro, I'm so sorry. And he, like, kind of hugs me, and he's, like, starts telling me about how, like, I'm so lucky he pulled his punch and how he could have hurt me really bad. Yeah. Bro, you're so little, and I could have killed you. And I was like, hey, man, don't worry about it. And I just leaned in. I was like, hey, man, I'm used to taking punches. I train you guys to fight in the UFC for a living. Like, I figured, like, that's what he would understand, you know?
Right.
And the dude almost started crying. He was just like, oh, my God, thank you for not hurting me. You could have heel hooked me and broken my leg and left me here crying. And you could have choked me out and killed me. And, like, you know, and he's like, I have friends that train and they barely train and they kick my ass. And I don't even know how to fight. I've never even been in a fight. And,
like, start telling you my story.
Yeah, it was funny. And so, yeah, I don't know. I got his name and stuff. And, you know, he was like, you know, at first I was like, man, just, you know, you got to come in and train, try it out for real. And he's like, oh, he lives in Louisville, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So he runs some tattoo shop down there. But, yeah, I got his name. Actually, oddly enough, I was like, man, I've got some buddies at Derby City down there. You got to check them out.
There you go.
But, yeah, I don't know. It was silly. So
there's some kind of, if you want to mess with people, so you've been to the gym before, I assume. It's been a little while. There's this, like, it was right next to this snow ice cone thing. It's like handwritten, some kind of, it's called like Radia's self-control. It's some shit you would see, like, it's the funniest thing. Like, it's all written in, like, with a paintbrush, and you're like, what in the hell? So you should I got to find the address. I'll send you a picture of this thing. It's just so crazy that the thing actually exists. Like, just right down the road from Derby City. I mean, I don't even know. You walk in, I think it's a joke. Maybe it's just a freaking joke. But it's not. It doesn't look legit at all. It's just like some guy just. I don't know. But I was going to ask you, man. As far as I actually didn't know a ton about. I know you've done some interviews. I actually stalked you a little bit. Not really.
Okay.
But I did some research, man. You know, just because I kind of like to know. I knew you kind of through Chewy and just doing your tournaments and stuff. But I kind of just wanted to ask you a little bit about like starting jiu-jitsu and stuff and kind of coming up in jiu-jitsu and competing when you were younger.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Just follow me on Instagram. I've been posting highlights from 98 to 2001.
How old were you when you started, by the way?
So I started in June of 97. So like literally 20 years, like crazy. 2 weeks ago.
And how old are you right now?
So I'll be 38 in a couple weeks. So I was right before I turned 18.
Gotcha.
So I started karate when I was like 13, like everybody else. And, man, I always had real bad, like, social anxiety. Like, and even to this day, I don't like being around people at all. I just, like, I'm sitting down here in my sauna. Just no one around, and it's wonderful. Yeah, man, like, I could never be in groups. Like, I had a hard time in school just because the people and stuff. But my dad finally forced me to go to karate when I was, like, 13. And I always had an interest in martial arts. Like, I was just born wanting to fight. You know, always watch like Bruce Lee and old Jackie Chan movies and, you know, Kung Fu Theater every Saturday or whatever. And, it got me to the point where I was like, okay, this is something I want. And, you know, I can at least be around people to do something I want to do. So when I was 16, I went and signed up at a judo academy because the guy lied to me and told me that he, did jiu-jitsu and trained with the Gracies and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I trained there. I did judo and this fake jiu-jitsu with him for probably about 3 years. And then I met a guy named Greg Eldred, who was a blue belt under Horion Gracie. hoist and horon, and was running like the Gracie affiliation. So I started with him in June of '97. Started competing immediately. I think my first 2 tournaments, I got my blue belt in 4 months. I got my blue belt in October of '97. But back then there was no stripes on white belts. So it was like, and I came from judo and fake jiu-jitsu. So I had some grappling, and I had the Gracie basics and maybe intermediate like VHS tapes.
Yeah.
So, I knew a lot of the system already that they were teaching. So I started training with Greg and got my blue belt in like 4 months. But I competed several times. One of those times was like out in California at the Gracie Nationals. And, and I did well when I competed. And then I held my blue for 4 years. I got my blue I got my purple in 2001. So every belt promotion I've had has been October. So it's really easy to like keeping, to know when all my promotions were. But yeah, I used to compete as often as possible. There just weren't a lot of tournaments. So, there was like one in Kentucky, and then there was like one here in Indiana. The Bluegrass, you're from the Louisville area. Yeah. So Bluegrass, Alan Manganello ran Bluegrass Open. And then Greg Lucas here in Indiana, he ran the state championships. And then there was like Gracie Nationals and just random tournaments here and there. So I actually did a lot of judo back in the day just because it was the closest thing. So I would train a little bit of judo and then go out and not use any judo whatsoever in tournaments. Like I almost never threw anybody. I think I've got like out of probably 100 matches, like 2 ippon throws, and then like 2 wazari throw and wazari pin, and then all the rest were submissions. Yeah. Just go limp, let them fall to the ground, and then I would choke them and arm lock them. And,
that's awesome.
I won some decent tournaments, judo wise and jiu-jitsu wise, I guess.
So where, like, as far as starting, did you decide that you wanted to teach or pursue jiu-jitsu on a higher level as far as like as a career choice, or what was your plan as far as jiu-jitsu?
So my plan was to do jiu-jitsu and train to fight and win the UFC and be better than all the other guys and just be awesome. Because I was a blue belt and I was super awesome.
Yeah, and, so the plan was MMA, essentially.
Basically, that's what I wanted to do. When I first started jiu-jitsu, it was just like, that's part of it.
Right. There's no money in it back then. There was really not very little.
Yeah, and then there was no money in MMA even, like, really. UFC was still running these big tournaments and stuff, but that was just my goal. So I took I did my first fight in March of '98, and so, I'd been doing jiu-jitsu about 9 months at that time.
Oh, wow.
And then I went out and I finished my fight in a minute flat, armbarred the kid, and then ended up actually fighting Shoney Carter.
Right. I saw that on your record, actually. What was that like?
Yeah. It was cool. So nobody knew who Shoney was. And so he was already a pro, and he was fighting in an amateur tournament. And
so you were in an amateur tournament?
Yeah, completely amateur. No strikes to the head on the ground.
Okay.
So there was a 4-man tournament, and a guy named Shad Williams, who's Sean Williams' brother. So Renzo Gracie, black belt Sean Williams.
Yeah.
His brother actually was supposed to fight Shoney, but he had broken his thumb in the first round, or his first fight that night. So they come to me. I'm like halfway dressed already, and they're like, "Hey, you got to fight Shoney." I'm like, "No, I don't." They're like, "Well, he just gets the belt." And I was like, "Well, what about?" It was Eric Moon from Chicago. I was like, well, Eric Moon won his match, and he's the same size as I am. And they're like, well, no, you're the alternate. So nobody told me I was an alternate. I'm just well, you're the alternate, so you either fight Shoney or he just wins. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'll fight him. And, again, no idea this guy's story or anything. Never seen him before in my life. And the event, it was a 12-minute round with a 3-minute overtime. So it was 15 minutes. It was just different. Yeah. But yeah, so Shoney and I went out, and I won the stand-up exchange, and then he just tossed me. Like, I had never wrestled in my life. I'd done some judo. but it wasn't good judo, But yeah, Shoney, I mean, it was like lateral drops and suplexes and hip tosses, and man, he threw me so many times. And I could hear his corner man, Bob Shermer, like, airtime. I'm like, what's he? Is he going to fly? Nope, he's going to throw. Oh, I'm in the air. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, those are lights. Wow. But yeah, we went the full distance, and he was very defensive. Like I couldn't catch him in anything. And again, I'd been doing jiu-jitsu 9 months.
Right.
But yeah, I couldn't. I got nowhere near a submission really. I got around his neck, around his arms a few times, but nothing legit. And he just tossed me all over the place and won the decision. So
how many fights? Do you remember how many fights maybe he had around that time? I mean, I think he's had over 100.
So at that time, he had just lost his WEC, or not, excuse me, not WEC. What was it? Extreme?
ECW?
Like extreme,
wait.
ECW, man?
No, I think that's wrestling.
Yeah, that's wrestling. Extreme Challenge, right? I think it was Extreme Challenge. Whatever the show was. Kind of a bigger show back then. Darn it, I don't remember now. But he had just lost his title to Laverne Clark. Okay. So I'm like, man, and people were calling me the next day. They're like, dude, do you have any idea who that was? And I didn't really care. Like, it could have been Hoist Gracie, and I was mad that I lost to this guy. And they're just like, man, he boxed in the Marines, and he was AAU, champion wrestler, and this and that, and he's the Extreme Challenge champion. And I'm like, I don't care. I lost. And I ended up like 3 months later, didn't even train for it. I was training all gi. I ended up fighting Keith Wisniewski, who, later Keith fought in the UFC, and super tough guy, man. Keith is good. But at the time, like, I was 18. I think he was like 16 or 17. And, I broke my foot like 15 seconds into the fight. I kicked him in his knee.
Uh-huh.
And the whole rest of the fight was just me like, I don't want to tap. But I ended up catching him in a pretty bad crucifix in that 12-minute round, 3-minute overtime, right at the end. And he taps, and it was just like 3, 2, 1, it's a draw.
Oh wow!
And the referee didn't know well enough to like just go, yeah, he's tapping. Like, it was one of those things where, like, even though he tapped well before the bell went off, like, the ref never stepped in, so it was just called a draw. Yeah.
So how'd your career from that point? Where would you want to take it? I mean, did you feel like you were still progressing or taking fights you shouldn't take, maybe?
Yeah. So my decision then, I was like, man, I've got to get my hands were okay. Like, my striking was okay. My wrestling was terrible. And so I focused a little more on my wrestling, and then I started doing more kickboxing. I had a couple really good kickboxing coaches. So I was like, I'm not taking any fights for a while. Like, I want to get better. I want to get really good, and I'm going to focus on jiu-jitsu because I liked jiu-jitsu more at the time.
Uh-huh.
So I just kept competing in jiu-jitsu. I stayed in shape, and kickboxed here and there, and like always kept it in the back of my mind. And then, I started winning more jiu-jitsu tournaments, and it was like, you win a tournament, you get a little more motivated, and you're like, oh, cool. How many of these can I win? And, and it was just, a lot of guys didn't want to train MMA. A lot of the guys that I liked and trained with, a lot of the MMA guys were like, hey, come meet my shed, and we're going to give each other ringworm while we're hitting each other in the face. And, it was like terrible environment. And so, I wasn't a big fan that, like, I still wanted to do the MMA. It was just the guys that I knew that were training it weren't professional athletes at the time, and again, we're talking like pre-2000 even.
Yeah. Did you think about traveling or moving any areas to train? Did you have any other training camps anywhere else?
No, I never really did any training camps anywhere else. And like I said, at the time, man, there just wasn't, the camps. It was, you look at these guys and like the jiu-jitsu guys were still winning.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, well, I don't need all the other stuff, and I was lucky enough when I first started, like there was no like taboo on footlocks, so like it was like you attack every part of the body every way possible, and you're still doing jiu-jitsu. So footlocks weren't like looked down upon or anything. So I didn't have to go train at Lion's Den to learn footlocks or anything like that. But But as far as camps go, like there just weren't really like these big schools, like later on, like, Militech Fighting Systems came up and you got the Lion's Den, but even then it was still mostly just jiu-jitsu guys that were dominating. But yeah, we talked about moving, moving to California, talked about moving to Hawaii and just training with these different guys. And you just kind of go to jiu-jitsu tournaments and see who's winning those. And then you kind of go, okay, well, this would be a good training environment. This would be a good training environment. And it just, 18-year-old kid, like pretty much fresh out of high school, working a full-time job. It just wasn't in the cards. I was supporting my family at the time. So yeah, I was kind of stuck in Indiana.
You were just actually working right out of school. Like did you plan to go to college or anything like that? Or
well, so I did, just because you graduate high school, you go to college. That was just that's what you do, and then once I graduated high school, I was like, dude, I never want to do that again. I don't want to be around people. I hate man, I've been out of high school for 20 years and I still have bad dreams about being in high school. And I didn't I wasn't picked on or anything like that. I had friends in high school. It was cake as far as school went. I always got really good grades, but I just hate being around people that much, a group of people is just I'm getting itchy talking about it. I'm
getting itchy. So you're a jiu-jitsu instructor and you're doing a podcast right now with somebody you really don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah. And honestly, man, it's really funny. I can teach jiu-jitsu, no problem. I can teach jiu-jitsu in front of anyone. No, if Hicks and Gracie walked in the room, I would teach jiu-jitsu and I wouldn't second guess myself. You know what I mean? I'm 100% confident in my jiu-jitsu abilities, and I've been teaching long enough that I don't get flustered at all,
What about competing on a big, in front of people, competing, MMA, did that add any extra nerves to you? Because that's a, huge thing that keeps people from competing,
Yeah. I'll tell you, I always get pretty nervous beforehand. Now I still do. It depends on the pressure I put on myself. Honestly, as a black belt, and I think more as a school owner, the pressure's different. You know what I mean? It's never me just going, I want to see if I can beat this guy. It's always oh, I have to win to promote the school and I need to medal. You know what I mean? It's almost different. If you look at my, my competition career, white belt, great, blue belt, great, purple belt, pretty freaking good. Brown belt, I lost one match in my weight class ever, and it was my very first brown belt tournament in the final. You know what I mean? Brown belt, very good. Black belt sucked. I'll win one, lose two. But the guys I'm fighting, man, it's everybody that I go against is a pan or a world champion, and I'm losing by an advantage or by 2 points or whatever. There's a couple guys that have kind of smoked me, but two. There's literally a couple.
Who were? You want to tell us who those people were? Just curious. Dan Koval out of I think he's in New Jersey or whatever. He beat the crap out of me at no-gi pans, and he's actually smaller than I am. But that guy's stupid strong. I couldn't believe how strong he was. I took my neck was really, really, really bad for about 3 years from 2009 to 2012. And I was just kind of getting to the point where I could roll again. And right off the bat, I shot a horrible double leg and cranked my neck. And it was downhill after that. I couldn't come back from it. And then Hobson de Lima, he smoked me twice. He smoked me in the gi one day in the final. And then the next day he smoked me in the no gi first round. It was horrible. What did he do that was maybe that was so much better or different than other guys?
So it's hard to say. He's very, very good. Number one, he's super strong. I'm a very, very, very physically weak human being. I've got teenage girls that outmuscle me that train in my academy. I don't pick up strength well. I had a really bad knee. I blew it out 10 years ago. I actually just had surgery on it last August. So it's been almost a year. But it's like my first jiu-jitsu related surgery. They had to remove like 70% of my meniscus.
Oh, wow.
So it was, I went out and competed, barely able to walk. And so first round, he pulled guard, which was my plan. I wanted to pull guard, and he swept me, and I just didn't have any defense. He took my back, freaking choked me. And then when we fought no-gi, I was like, well, I'm going to stay on my feet and just kind of grip fight and wrestle a little bit. And he picked up my good leg, and I couldn't stay up on my bad leg, and he dumped me and passed and tapped me. So I've been tapped 4 times, 2 times gi, 2 times no gi as a black belt, and he was 1 of each. So
you just kind of, is that something that bothers you if somebody taps you out? I mean, is that something that really?
No, not really, man. Like it's one of those things. Like losing is losing.
Yeah.
I've not been tapped very often in tournaments. Like almost never. Like almost never. There's like a handful of guys that have ever tapped me.
Yeah.
But,
what do you?
yeah.
How does it make you? I mean, do you feel like you're any worse because you get tapped? I mean,
no.
Still
you know
black
what?
belt,
Here's what it was. Like here's what it was. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like when I first started jiu-jitsu, it was like the era of Hoist Gracie, right?
Yeah.
And it was like the no time limit. Like, oh yeah, you can beat on Hoist for an hour and a half, and sooner or later you're gonna get tapped. And there wasn't. It was like, oh, just be smooth and relaxed. And actually, I talked to Chewy. I did Chewy's podcast when he was doing it.
Right. I actually didn't listen to it. I saw it.
Oh,
I never.
That's probably my best one ever.
Really?
Chewy's got a great radio voice.
Dude, he's awesome. He's been on my podcast, I swear. Like, I've got like 28, 29 episodes. He's been on it like
nice.
8 times.
That's awesome.
He's just good, man. He's awesome.
Yeah. But it was just everything was laid back, and it was just like, oh, yeah, I might be on my back for an hour, but eventually I'll get him. And so I think, when I was like 18, 19, even 20, like guys would beat me on points, and just in my head, it was like, well, they didn't beat me.
Right.
Had the match been longer, I would have gotten them, and I guess like really ultimately looking at it, that was just kind of an excuse, but it was kind of the mentality at the time. You know what I mean? Like if you don't tap somebody, you don't beat them. And so I never got tapped ever. And then, later on as I, kept competing, like I've been tapped a few times, but,
like as far as wins that you've had, MMA or jiu-jitsu related that you've had that really were special or,
every one of them, every single one of them special. Like getting your hand raised just feels amazing. You know what I mean? No matter who it is. Like I don't want to throw names out there like that, but like just coming up competing, like I'd fight a guy that like, oh man, this guy's a 2-time Pan Am champ, and like handle him pretty well. It's like, oh, cool, and then there were some guys that like I'd go against, and they would just barely beat me. Like like I said, like as a black belt, man, all the guys that have beaten me have been like world or Pan champs or both, and it's always been by very small margins.
Yeah.
So like me, I don't train, man. Like I never train to compete. Like I teach and I run my academy, and if I can go out there and I can roll with these guys that are world champions and do fairly well, like I feel pretty good about that. But at the same time, it's like, man, what if I did actually like pick up some weights or stretch a little bit, or just really like sit down and drill, and like we have hard rolling sessions here and there, but like I'm not in the point in my life where I train to be competitive, and so I don't compete as much as I would like.
Do you feel like because you've been maybe fortunate to not deal? I mean, I guess you've had obviously some pretty bad injuries, but like, do you feel like if you would have done weight training or flexibility or rehab type stuff that may have maybe helped your career out, or you maybe have less injuries? Or
yeah, for sure, man. Like I think anyone that says like, oh, lifting weights is stupid, or, like don't rely on strength. Like, absolutely. I think like, if you're 350 pounds of just freaking, 2% body fat, and you can lift a car, like,
right,
you're going to come in and your technique's not going to be as crisp as it should be, because you got all this strength to rely on. I've never had that. So I think I've probably developed technically a little better than a lot of guys. But if I were like some giant, like these like super, roided out heavyweights, if I were built like that, or if I even just had that strength, then absolutely I would do better. And that's kind of a motivator, but like I said, I run my academy full time, and it's like, I feel like if I sit down for an hour and lift weights, that's an hour of marketing that's not getting done, or it's a newsletter that's not getting written, or it's a video that's not getting edited. You know what I mean? It's a podcast that I'm not on, like whatever it is, like, and I don't like doing it. I don't like stretching. I don't like picking up things. Like I used to drive a forklift, and you pick it up, you put it on the shelf, and you leave it there. Like one pickup or one set down, and you're done. Just picking a weight up over and over for, not putting it somewhere. It's just
so it's just not like, as far as from a motivational, you just didn't feel like the rewards were, I guess, substantial enough to.
Yeah, and man, back like probably until like the past like few years, I never really had somebody that really knew what they were doing. You know what I mean? So I got shot in February of 2000, and it wrecked my body like really bad.
Yeah.
For well over a year, like I couldn't hardly lift. I couldn't eat. My mouth was like almost completely shut. Like, I just like, I was like 150 pounds of like atrophied muscle, and I was just getting injured all the time. And it was like, once I started lifting and stuff, I did feel better. I did perform better, but like even the guy I was lifting with at the time was just kind of like, he ran a gym, and it was like, okay, we're just going to lift all this stuff. And, there's these giant, like, 17 station circuits. And it was just, it wasn't like there was no science behind it, really. It was like, hey, I'm kind of strong, and I've done this, and here's what we're just going to pick up all these different weights. And so, when I was there and I had somebody that could like lead me and coach me, like I was able to, actually I got up to about 186 at one point. I was actually cutting to get back into the 170s, which is what I walk around at. And I felt good, man. Like I was winning tournaments and picking guys up over my head and stuff, and there's been a few times throughout that I've actually like sat down and really hit like a weight program, and it has done well for me. But then there's other times where
what kind of benefits do you feel like you saw from it?
Just not being the weakest kid in the kids class.
Yeah.
I was able to muscle around some like 11-year-olds, and it was awesome. No, it's one of, like, when I'm bigger and stronger, I do tend to get injured less, but with certain, like I've got like a torn labrum in my shoulder that I think I've actually had since I was a kid, but I re-injured it in 2015. At Nogi Pants, actually dislocated my shoulder completely in my first round.
Yeah.
But anytime I like start to lift or even do anything now, it gets really aggravated. I'm at a point now where like it feels pretty good, and so like in my head I'm like, okay, like let's get back in the, like I've got a little weight area at my gym, and like I've got some programs written out, and I'm like, okay, let's get back in and start doing this. And then it's like, well, my shoulder feels good, so do I really want to pick up those weights?
Did you do any rehab for it? Like, do you just kind of give it time? Did you do physical therapy?
Time, and, just doing the bands and stuff.
Yeah.
Man, honestly, it was bugging me just a few weeks ago. It was starting to get to the point where it was hurting pretty bad, and I went to an acupuncturist, and he stuck, and I've been like, it's been like 5 weeks, and it's been perfect, like no issues at all. So
that's interesting.
Maybe I can lift some weights, and
maybe I think
it starts getting irritated, then I'll go back to the acupuncturist. And
but do you feel like you're like correcting the problem, or you may just come back?
Yeah, the surgeon said I definitely need surgery, so I don't. It's one of those things, like I don't know. Like I'm sure it's just going to get worse over time. It's like a labrum tear. They said I tore everything in my shoulder, but the labrum was the main issue, the thing that wasn't going to heal on its own. So
it depends on some of that area doesn't get great blood supply, and so it's just if it's a small tear, that sometimes they say it scars back down, and you kind of do a little rehab to strengthen the shoulder, and it does fine. But if it's a bad tear, you can keep having dislocations, and the tear can get worse potentially. Because it's not as strong of a joint and stuff. So yeah. I mean, I've definitely seen, as far as a physical therapist, I've seen like shoulder. They say shoulder and elbow. I was going to tell you, like I did some research, and they actually said like the highest prevalence of injuries is not actually from the feet or anything like that. It's actually shoulders, like elbows and like arms. So shoulder, because most submissions or a lot of submissions are kimuras, Americanas, arm bars, certain kind of locks, straight arm locks and stuff like that. So I mean it's one of the things I've seen. I've had actually a fractured radius, so I broke my arm actually planting. I was doing jiu-jitsu and somebody pulled on me and I planted and I heard 2 pops, and I was fortunate I didn't break it in a bad spot, but it was, I can definitely see that. And that's not something I could have avoided. And I mean, I could have avoided it if I would have broken off the cross collar grip and not been stupid. But so, James, I was going to ask you, man, are you, I didn't know a ton about your, like your past and stuff. And you had mentioned that you had you had been shot. So is that something you're okay with talking about?
Yeah, for sure.
It is? Okay. And I didn't know a lot about you at all. So before we did the podcast, I actually looked up, I think you've done a couple interviews. And I didn't even know that about you. Now, it was crazy, and I just kind of wanted to, as far as not the details though, but like more of the recovery. I mean, you can talk about kind of how it went down if you'd like, but more or less like I'm really interested in your road to recovery, like how you got back to, doing jiu-jitsu at a high level and kind of, continuing everything you've been doing. So.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you the super, super, super brief story. Basically, I was sitting at a stoplight. A guy pulled up next to me. He was a passenger in a car and just shot me. 9mm, shot me dead in the cheekbone. Bullet embedded almost pretty much as center of my head as you can possibly get without doing a lot of soft tissue damage. So I still have the bullet in my head. I've got, two metal plates to reconstruct my cheekbone. I'm blind in my left eye. Actually, I just had surgery and this was 2000. So after 17 years, there was finally a surgery available to possibly fix some damage to my ear. So I just had that done 3 weeks ago.
Did you have hearing loss as well on that side?
Yeah, a little bit. So the kind of the ear canal basically collapsed, and so it doesn't drain. So there's a little bit of hearing loss, and then if I get any kind of water, sweat, anything in it, it stays in there, right? So I've had just tube after tube put in my ear. My body rejects them constantly. I had a big surgery last year to put some super long-lasting tube in. It's supposed to last 10 years. And it fell out 2 weeks later. I was literally standing in my bathroom, and I was like, what? And I shook my head, and this tube just falls out of my head. I'm like, oh, awesome.
It's not supposed to happen.
Yeah. I went back. I was like, this was supposed to last 10 years. It didn't last freaking a couple months.
Oh, my God.
He's like, oh, yeah, it sucks. Basically what they did was it's like an angioplasty, but on the ear, where they take the tube in and they blow the balloon up.
Right.
So I've not even had my follow-up yet. It's been so recent. So they won't know if it even took until I go in and they had to put a new tube in this before they'll know. Or it has to fall out before they'll know if the surgery took or not.
Yeah. So when you sustain that gunshot, I mean, I have not heard of many people, actually functioning, at a high level,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it has to be. Do you feel like it was as crazy as it sounds? Do you feel like you were lucky? I mean,
yeah. That's everybody's always like, "Oh man, you were so lucky."
I mean, that's a crazy
not lucky,
say,
but
I don't even want to say that because it sounds just so freaking terrifying to me.
Yeah, it's so looking at it less than 5% of people survive a gunshot to the head, and I've met 2 other people that did, and neither one of them are nearly as fortunate as I am. Yeah. I've got very, very few physical limitations. Like I said, a little hearing, hearing, and then I'm blind in my left eye. So I get a little, my balance isn't what it used to be. My depth perception is very bad. so that was kind of a turning point as far as like trying to fight MMA. You know what I mean? Like blinded my eyes. So really, it was after I got shot that I started teaching, and then started focusing mainly on jiu-jitsu. Recovery wise, man, like, you know, so I got shot February 20th, and my academy opened. I was assistant instructor. My academy opened March 3rd.
Okay.
Do the math. It's like, you know, 2 weeks later.
So how long were you in the hospital? Like, were you
3 days.
Unconscious or?
Nope, I never really lost consciousness. So I got shot, laid there for a second, completely deaf, completely blind, and I was like, oh, I have to take action because, you know, the guy could have been still firing. I could have other bullets like missing me. He could be walking up on me. I didn't know. So, you know, I kind of floored it and drove a couple blocks completely blind. Rear-ended a car, getting on the interstate. Once I rear-ended a car, like I clipped him. I didn't rear-end him hard. Just kind of clipped him. I was like, well, I got somebody's attention. And this was in 2000. Like nobody had cell phones or anything then.
Oh my God, man.
I sure didn't. But the guy that I hit actually had a cell phone and he was on it. And so I hopped out and I was like, hey, call 911. I just got shot in the head. And,
oh my God.
I actually leaned on his car. I tell a story all the time. I think it's funny, but I leaned on his car and like blood is pouring out of my head. Like with my heartbeat, it looks like somebody just squeezing a gallon of blood, you know, just shaking it out. And I was like, man, I just hit this guy's car and now I'm bleeding all over. Like that's rude. I'm going to go lay in the street.
That's what you felt bad about.
Yeah. So I go over and I kneel down in the street. And as soon as I kneel down, I see this like sheriff's deputy walking toward me. And he's walking up and he's like, you know, he doesn't really know what to say. And I was like, some effer at that light just shot me in the face. And he's like, give me your license and give me your ID. Like he did that. Like, you're about to die. I want to know who you are. And so I just kind of chucked my wallet at him, you know, and he and then another sheriff's deputy gets there and she's like, lay down. And they get in this argument over if I should lay down or stay where I'm at. And I was like, hey, I'm staying. Like, I'm okay. I'm staying where I'm at. Like, I'm good to go. And
what do you mean you're okay? Like,
I wasn't dead. You know what I mean?
What did you, I mean, I don't even know. I don't know even what the hell to ask, you know? Like,
no, I 100%, I thought I was going to die. So, you know, I never, you know, right there, 2 minutes after getting shot in the head, I didn't expect to be as well off as I am. You know what I mean?
Right. So, like,
I was like,
knowing what's going on and talking and.
Yeah. Like, I was like, I'm going to have severe brain damage or I'm going to die. Right. Like that. I mean, that was literally like, it was A or B for me. And so, like, I started doing math problems in my head. I started going over jiu-jitsu moves, and I'm like, okay, like, I feel like my brain is okay, so I'm probably dying.
Oh
you know, like, I've lost so much blood. I saw this blood just gushing out of my head. I'm like, it clipped a carotid artery or something. Like, I'm dead. Like, it's just a matter of minutes before I just kill over right here. And it was, like I said, it was February, Indiana, so it's freezing cold. Paramedics get there. They start cutting all my clothes off. So I'm laying on a bridge in, you know, the winter in my underwear after losing a ton of blood. And they get me an ambulance. And, like, I was starting to fade. I was, like, kind of going sleepy, you know. And I asked the EMT, I was like, hey, is it cool if I, like, can I go to sleep? And he's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, no. Let me rephrase this. Like, I can stay awake if you need me to. Like, can I go to sleep and wake up? Like, am I going to die? And he's like, no, man, I've got you. Just, you can relax. And I was like, okay, I hope he's right. So, like, I kind of let myself go to sleep a little bit. And, you know, I'd wake up every few seconds, just kind of wake up when they're getting me out of the ambulance, when we're hitting the doors in the hospital. And, man, it seems like it took them forever to do any kind of surgery on me. I remember waking up, like, on this bed with, like, all these, like, hot blankets on me, just freezing. And, like, my dad's there, and then my girlfriend, AJ, was there. And I'm like, this is horrible. You know, and I'm trying to play it cool, like, oh, no, I'm cool, guys. You know, like, oh, it doesn't hurt. And it hurt real bad. But yeah, and then, like, so I go into surgery and, you know, I had a guy he's still my surgeon to this day, still the guy that he did the ear surgery on me a couple weeks ago. but a guy named Dr. Kenny, and he came in and freaking put my eye, I'm sure was, I wish I had pictures of it. Like, I wish I could see everything that happened. I wish I could see what I look like. But they had to basically put like a hammock under my eyeball to hold it in place, and then he put the plates in my cheekbone, and I remember waking up later, and I was just like, holy crap, I feel better. Like, and never any kind of drugs, no morphine, no anything throughout the process. But yeah, and then so I was in there about 3 days. They kept me in, just kind of monitor everything, and the bullet actually missed my carotid artery by less than a centimeter. It's like stupid close.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So that actually affects me a lot to this day. Like, if I get injured, I can't get an MRI.
Right.
So they don't, they're like, oh yeah, it could be fine, or you die instantly, one or the other.
Yeah, that's a risk that it's fun.
Yeah, so I got some interesting like myograms and stuff to check out injuries. But
what was like your motor function? Like, when did you start like getting back up, moving around, walking?
It was weird for weeks. Like I said, 2 weeks later, I was at the grand opening of the academy, like just kind of laying on the mat, drooling and like being miserable. But man, I think it was months before, like, they didn't want me to lift anything over 5 pounds. Like, if I stood up fast, I would instantly just collapse. Like, I had to spend weeks like face down because of the pressure on my eye, and it was crap. Like, it was bad for a while. And I came in and man, I honestly, I couldn't remember how long. Like, I remember, I think about 6 months in. No, I competed at 6 months in. Probably about 4 or 5 months in. The doctor that did the eye surgery, the plates, he was like, yeah, man, you can get punched and stuff. Like, you're good to go.
Really?
And but I had surgeries on the actual eyeball itself, because there's holes in the back of my eye, and all the damage is actually to the back of my eye. So there's scar tissue, my retina detached. And the doctor that did all that stuff was like, nope, can't get choked, no pressure at all. So I trained a little tiny bit, very lightly, for about a month or two.
How many months out were you?
So this was probably, I'm going to say this was like July. So March, April, May, June, July. So about 5 months out.
So maybe. 5 months after you were shot, you were already back on the mats.
Yeah. And, I was, honestly, man, it was probably closer to 4. Like, I feel like it was probably like right around summertime. So probably June. But I couldn't get choked at all. So it was like Sambo City, arm locks, legs. And if anybody touched my neck, I had to tap. You know what I mean? Like, I could not get choked. And then, man, I remember like I went into that eye doctor, and he was like, "You're good to go. You can get choked again, man. You're set. Like, you can lift, you can do whatever. You can get choked." And that was a Thursday. The next morning, we got in the car and drove to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I competed that Saturday. So I was like, 150 pounds, like, and at one point my jaw had actually locked shut. So like I hadn't been eating for months, and like I was so tiny and weak. But actually I won my division, got third in the open, and then I did the no-gi open, and then met my buddy Ray Casillas, and he was real fat and I was real little, and he broke my arm, and so we're good friends now, though.
Like, really broke your arm?
And I mentioned that story on every single podcast ever.
Did he really break your arm? Like,
he caught me in a Americana, but with the legs.
Yeah.
And just like tore a tendon in my elbow, but it's still like, even
so it was like your first tournament back from not forever.
Yeah, and I always give him crap. I'm like, hey, Ray, remember that time when I got shot in the face and then you were real fat and you broke my arm? And he's like, yeah, I do. But,
does he feel bad about that?
Probably.
So, like, how did you start back? Like, I want to know as far as like the first day. You went to the gym, you laid around for a while. When did you start actually getting on the mats?
So it started like I would just come in and just kind of sit and watch and just be a part of it. You know what I mean? Because it was a big part of my life, right. And just being there to help really meant a lot to me. And at first it was like I just sat around. I would sit for a little bit and then I'd leave. And then I honestly, I couldn't even give you a time frame. Like I feel like it was a few months, maybe 3 or 4 months, where I would just I'd walk around and kind of pinpoint stuff. And I never wore a gi because I didn't want people to like grab me and like try to do moves on me and things. So I just wear my normal clothes and I just walk in and just kind of help out with, and it was always small classes. I mean, it was a brand new academy back in like, 2000. So, jiu-jitsu wasn't what it is today. It wasn't as popular. But I just kind of gradually started walking around. And then, like I said, when I was released to get hit, I started kind of going through and drilling a little bit. And everybody I trained with was really cool. And they knew, like, hey, stay away from his neck, no pressure, don't be heavy. And it was just very minimal movements, some technique drills, a little bit of flow rolling, no real rolling, really. Probably a few times more than I should have. But yeah, it was just a slow recovery. And then, man, I remember, so what I say, I got released in August. I did that jiu-jitsu tournament. And then there was an 8-man MMA tournament that was going to take place in Indianapolis. And I was like, you know what? I think that might be my last fight. I think I'm going to go out here and do this 8-man tournament.
Okay.
And I was like, so that kind of...
That sounds crazy, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Did you just want to go out on your terms, I guess? I mean... Yeah,
basically. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It was just like, man, I know I can't do this the rest of my life. I know I'll never do this again. So I want one last night, one go at it, and see if I can do this. And so I started training real hard.
What was it like taking a punch? I mean, the first time you got hit.
So the biggest problem was my depth perception. Yeah. So I got hit a lot more than I used to, and I didn't land all the punches that I used to. Mm-hmm. But taking a shot on that titanium is actually pretty cool. Like it doesn't hurt much at all.
Really?
Which is exactly where the guy at the concert punched me, and I was like, "Oh, you just hurt your knuckles, didn't you?" But
so that was after the fact. Gotcha.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Not bad, man. Like I remember the first time I got hit, like I was like, oh, that's not nearly as bad as I thought. What I will say is in the early days of it, though, there wasn't, it didn't hurt, but even like just tiny little minimal bumps would cause it to swell immensely.
Oh, wow.
Like it would it would look like I got a giant elbow dropped on me if somebody like flipped me. You know what I mean? So like any time that I would get bumped, it would just mouse up real bad. And that actually went on for years. But, yeah, man, I trained super hard for that fight. And honestly, my downfall of that one was the fact that I didn't have anyone that knew how to cut weight. I didn't have a dietitian. I didn't have anybody that like really understood what it took. And so it was like, oh yeah, you just cut out all your fat and all your carbs and all your sugars and you just kind of go from there. It was just, like my weight went down fine. I hit the sauna that day. I made weight perfectly, like on the money, 155. And, I think it was actually 158 was the weight class, however that works. But yeah, it was 8-man tournament, like pretty much old UFC rules, like no headbutts, no groin shots, but you could soccer kick, you could elbow and knee to the face on the ground, really? Like all that fun stuff.
It was
what's that?
It was in a cage.
It was in a ring.
In a ring, like a pride ring or a boxing ring.
Yeah, like a garbage boxing ring.
Gotcha.
I know nobody had octagons or cages back then, other than the UFC. Yeah, it was a ring. But yeah, I went out and the other half of that was everybody was like, no striking. You're not allowed to punch anybody. Like they didn't want me getting in boxing matches because they didn't want me getting hit. They didn't, So
as far as training, you weren't doing any striking?
Only on the ground. So my whole focus was just clinch, takedown, ground and pound, submission.
Okay.
It worked out pretty well. Like, I mean, I threw some shots to get in and set up stuff. I did throw a couple kicks. My first match was a guy named Mike Willis, who was, he was actually Mac Danzig's coach at the time. Had a good fight with him. Everything I fought in has stupid rules. So this tournament had 2 5-minute rounds and then a 3-minute overtime.
2 5.
But so even if you won the 2 5s, you still went to overtime. Like it just didn't make sense.
If you won the first 2 rounds,
it wasn't over. Yeah, it just you went to a third round. It's just the third round was 3 minutes instead of 5.
Okay.
But yeah, so I beat him the 2 rounds, tapped him in overtime. Had a second match, tapped the guy real quick in like minute and a half. And then the guy I met in the final, pretty tough guy. Like, we were both 4-stripe blue belts in jiu-jitsu. I think he won Gracie Nationals in 98. I won him in 99. He had a lot more MMA experience than I did. And he had only fought 20 seconds leading up to getting the final. So he fought like a 14-year-old kid first round, threw 2 knees, and it was over. And then the guy in his second round didn't show, just was like, nope, I'm done.
Okay.
So didn't even fight. So, I had about 15 minutes ring time, and he had literally 20 seconds. And but I won the first 2 rounds, and it was hard fought, man. He dropped me once, and I actually won the rounds pretty much off my back. I couldn't take the guy down. And then finally, the end of the second, I took him down, and I was like, cool, I've got the formula. I got him. So we went to the third, and, my coaches are like, man, we just looked at the scorecards. You're winning. Just don't get tapped out. Don't get tapped out and you win. And so I get in, and I throw a couple jabs, I clinch, and, he made me pay hell to clinch the first 2 rounds. And this, I just walked out and clinched him, and I was like, holy crap, I just won. This fight's fine. And I go for the same inside trip that I took him down with at the end of the second. And he whizzed me real hard, and we both fall. Well, what happened is he was on my left side, my blind side.
Uh-huh.
And so I basically land on my hands and knees. I didn't realize he had fallen with me. So I'm like, I didn't want to be on my back again. So I tried to turn real fast to grab his legs because I just assumed he was going to soccer kick me. And as I spin and turn, he's not standing over me. He's almost under me. Well, I gave him my neck.
Okay.
I dove right into a guillotine.
Oh,
basically.
I got you. I thought you had turned.
So, I thought he was standing, and when I turned, I'm basically in his guard. And he just locked it up, and I was, completely flat, my mouthpiece twisted, and it was curtains. I sat there for a second. I tried to fight it. I tapped. I remember him not letting go. I was like, oh. And then he let go, and, so I was like, damn it, I just lost my retirement fight. That sucks.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Did you have a desire? I mean, after that, you were that was it. You were done. I mean, you feel like that's a success.
I made a commitment that I was done, and obviously it was always there, and especially once I really once I started running the academy, and I was pretty good brown belt, got my black, I was like, man. And what really happened was I started reffing all the local shows. And just the low level of skill these guys had, and I'm training guys that are blue belts, and they're going out there winning all these fights and these titles. It's like, man, I can beat that guy in 20 seconds, every single time. And he's the champion on this show. And
right.
I was like, maybe I should just make one more run and just go out and win a title on every single show, but yeah, I was like, no, it's stupid. I've got one eye, all it takes is some jaggedy fingernail or something, and
it's in the other one. Scratch it and you're done.
So yeah.
Who were some of? Have you had some people you said you trained that have fought professionally in UFC or WEC? Have you had any people you worked with?
Just a few UFC wise. So we've got a lot of guys from Indiana. A lot of guys come through integrated fighting. So I've been fortunate enough to get to work with a lot of guys. There's Chris Lytle, Jake O'Brien, Johnny Reese, all these guys out of Indiana that have fought in the UFC. I've worked with most of them at one point or another. Big Sean McCorkle, Big Sexy. I cornered him in all his UFC fights. Chris Price, I worked with him a lot before his first. He had 2 fights. He kind of got screwed, man. He had been training about 9 months, and just the gym he was training at. They ran a gym, they ran a show, they managed fighters. So within 9 months, he racked up a 10-0 record.
Oh wow!
And then he got to go fight Kendall Grove, his first UFC fight, right after Kendall won the Ultimate Fighter. and he lost. And then his next fight was Ed Herman, who got second on Ultimate Fighter, and he lost that, and then they booted him. But super tough guy. But yeah, I've got to work with a lot of guys. We've got a lot of guys that have fought on all these amateur shows, and even some like WC and stuff like that. But man, I'll tell you, a couple years ago, my MMA program just kind of stopped almost, and it really had a lot to do with me because I was real involved with it. And then when my neck, so I've got like spinal stenosis in my neck.
Okay.
And it's from the shooting, right? It just didn't really manifest until about 2009. It got to the point where like I was having a hard time doing any MMA. I couldn't kickbox. I couldn't get hit in any way, or like one tiny little hit and I would be out for a week.
So what exactly, what started happening? What did you start feeling?
Man, I just excruciating pain 24/7. My right arm's numb, like pretty much permanently numb. I was having trouble like gripping things. Mm-hmm. And
it just started kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah. So I tore my knee out in 2007, put me out of competition for about a year and a half. And then, 2009, I was like, man, I'm going to wreck it this year. I'm going to train hard. I'm going to compete all over the place. And I think by May I had competed like 5 times. And then it was just like, my neck is toast. And I couldn't train, and like everything, like my life was just miserable. Like I was in horrible pain all the time. Like it was terrible. And man, I was doing everything. I was doing massage and chiropractic and heat and ice and stretching and freaking yoga and like cervical decompression therapy. Like, I mean, if it was available, I was doing it. Everything that I could possibly do, I was doing, and like nothing helped. And then just randomly, one day I was like feeling around in my neck, and so first I go to the specialist. Like this guy, I send him my like CTs and my X-rays. This guy down in Clarksville, Tennessee. He worked with UFC fighters and some Strikeforce guys, and everybody was like, man, this guy can fix you. He can help you. And so I send him all this, I send him all my scans and stuff, and they're like, hey, if you can be here in the morning, I'll hook you up. I'll fix you. Like, holy crap. No amazing. Way. So I freaking grabbed one of my brown belts. I was like, hey, you're teaching class until I get back. And I don't know when that is. Have a good time. And me and my wife packed up. We drove down to my buddy Ray's. Stayed with him that night. Got up early in the morning. Drove into Clarksville. Guy walks in the door and goes, there's nothing I can do for you. And I was like, what? Like, yesterday you told me to like drop my entire life and come down here and you were going to fix me. And now like the first thing you say is you can't help me. And he's like, well, I didn't really look at your scans before I talked to you. I was like, holy crap, dude. Like you just wasted all my time. And he's like, yeah. Well, like go get this myelogram and all this, and we'll see what we can do about it. And, so I don't know if you're familiar with like a myelogram, but they pump, they pump dye into your spinal, like spinal fluid. Horribly painful, super uncomfortable. And so they did that, and then they took some X-rays and CTs, and then I had to basically lay flat for 24 hours after that. But yeah, he was like, oh yeah, you need a triple spinal fusion, and you can never do jiu-jitsu again, and your wife probably can't ever hug you around the neck or anything. So yeah, your life's basically over now. So I was like, that's not better, man. Like I don't, that's not better at all. He's like, well, you won't be in so much pain all the time. I'm like, maybe. Yeah, maybe. So I was like, well, not doing that. Go F yourself. Like this was a waste of my life. But so I don't know how long after that, but I'm sitting there and like I could feel this like spot in my neck, and it hurt real bad. And I was like, man, I just wish like whatever that is, if that would just stop hurting. And so like I literally would like do like retro adjustments on myself. Like I would just push my fingers into my neck and like kind of bend my neck back. And pop.
So you're basically pushing the disc. So if the disc is protruding back or posteriorly, actually extending, and that's kind of some exercise you do for the low back to actually promote that disc into more like a forward position. So
like I was kind of forcing that curve, right? Like that natural curve. Yep. But when I would do it, it would pop. And I was like, oh, okay, weird. So I'm just going to keep doing this because it's popping and it hurts right there. And it kind of feels a little bit better when it pops. And, you know, I just did it multiple times a day, like every single day. And then one day I was teaching like basic like choke defense. And I was like, cool guys, like make sure you tuck your chin here. Like I can't do this because of my neck, and I tucked my chin in and I was like, oh, holy crap, I can tuck my chin. Like, so I have no idea how long like I was able to do it before I realized, you know, that it didn't kill me. And I started moving around and started doing things. I was like, my neck is not as bad as it's been. And,
Yeah.
You know, and I started training again, and I was like, oh man. But yeah, it took me like 3 years to get over like, and I still have pain in my neck. I still have numbness in my arm, and so it's not 100%. But yeah, it's better than having freaking 3 of my vertebrae screwed together. You know.
Are you doing anything now as far as like therapy or?
I still get regular massages. I still get regular chiropractic. You know, I'm stretching and stuff, and sleep on my little round pillow and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm not doing any like, you know, like weighted training or anything like that.
So, as far as like your like jiu-jitsu now, like training now, like have you changed your training regimen, or after your neck injury, like while you had that, were you training kind of sporadically, not a lot of drilling, not a lot of rolling, or after your neck got better, did you start kind of getting a little more aggressive?
So when it was real bad, it was mainly just me being depressed all the time. like I mean, it was actually pretty bad. Like guys were like, dude, like your classes suck. Like you're like, you don't have any energy like you used to. And I was like, man, like I remember at one point I was like, I realized like how unhappy I am. And I realized that it's really reflecting in my teaching and stuff. And so like I really tried to like make it a point to like smile and to be, you know, to be on. Like even like I was miserable, I was horribly miserable and wanted to cry like 24/7, you know, but I just made it a point to like be super ultra peppy, which, you know, came out as like me barely smiling, but yeah, you know, I made it a point to like really, you know, try to be more happy and motivating and you know, be there for the students. But for myself, it was like minimal, like small drilling, just trying to work on new things and just drilling stuff and no rolling forever. Once my neck got better, man, it was on. Like I was like rolling hard all the time, every day, and it's held up pretty well. Like I said, it was 2012.
Like technique kind of came back fairly, you know, or your time. I feel like if I've been out for a while, like my timing.
It's always timing, yeah. And it took a little while. Like I got the crap kicked out of me by, you know, once my neck stopped hurting, I was a pretty good purple belt. Like, you know, and I say that like only half jokingly, like, you know, knowledge wise, yeah, black belt, but like when I'd roll, man, like my good purple belts would put it on me pretty bad. But you know, after a few months, it didn't go that way anymore. So. Yeah, it took a little while to get my timing back and just get back in the, you know, because I mean, it was 3 years that I wasn't rolling hard. I wasn't rolling to win, and I'd roll here and there, but it was like just kind of let guys work and let guys dominate. And yeah, honestly, man, the biggest change in my game was actually when I blew my knee out. So like I said, 10 years ago, and I never really changed much, but then probably the past 2 years, it was just horrible, like really, really bad. And so I couldn't close guard. I couldn't go for basic arm bars, triangles, like nothing. No standard jiu-jitsu stuff worked. I had to change the way I passed because of the way I post on it. I couldn't wrestle at all.
So what kind of game did you play before, and then what did you evolve to?
So I did everything before. So like guard wise, like I always did a lot of like butterfly guard. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I couldn't extend it. I couldn't have people push it in. I couldn't lock close guard. So I went from being able to just do, you know, a normal jiu-jitsu game to I had to completely focus on a Lucas Leite guard, right? I think he calls it the coyote guard now.
Yeah. If you describe that for people who don't know what that is.
So let's see. So my left knee is my bad knee. Basically, I would be half guard with my left knee in the middle, right? So my right leg or my outer leg would hook his left leg. So his leg that's trapped between mine.
Yes.
My outer leg hooks that and draws it in.
Uh-huh.
And then you actually remove the half guard leg. So you come all the way out, right? Okay. So there's really no guard at all, which kind of sounds weird. But like my right leg has his left leg trapped, and I'm almost belly down. So I kind of developed that, and or developed that part of my game. I didn't develop the leg guard, obviously, but I really had to develop that part of my game because it allowed me to do jiu-jitsu without using my left leg hardly at all. And then what was it? It was like July of last year. I was a new student, first night in. He came from another academy, and we're going real light, kind of filling each other out, really. Super light, and I lock it up, and I just barely moved a little bit, and I was like, oh, hang on, man, my knee feels funny, and I kind of moved it, and I was like, no, I'm good, and I went to move it, and I was like, oh, I can't move my leg, hold on, and I sat there, and I was like, okay, I thought my kneecap came out, and so I was like, okay, I said, hey, will you just grab that leg and just kind of straighten it, just straighten it out, right? And he starts straightening it, and it just hurts real bad, and like starts getting excruciating. And I'm like, okay, it's not out of place. Like I don't know what's happening. And so like stop, and like I couldn't walk on it, I couldn't straighten it. Like it was just horrible. And I was like, man, it feels like there's something's inside my knee, not letting my knee straighten. Right. And like we didn't have crutches at the academy for some reason. I ended up using like the shelving from the locker room as crutches to get to my car. Nice. And so I ended up going to the orthopedic, Ortho Indy, or a little orthopedic place the next day, and the girl was like describing a bucket handle tear. Yes, exactly, yeah. And I was like, that's exactly what it feels like, because my meniscus has flipped inside. She's like, yep, that's exactly what it did. I'm like, oh, didn't realize that was a thing. Yep. So that was Monday night. So I was obviously I didn't teach it all that whole week. Well, Thursday we flew to Arizona for a 10-day hiking trip with my dad, and I was like, this is horrible. Like I was like, just super sad about it. And but when we were at the ortho place, she said that they used to do manual manipulation. Yeah, try popping back in. Yeah, and it would flip back out. And she's like, well, we don't do that because we don't have very good success, and it's really painful. And so, like, that first morning, like that Friday morning, I wake up and, like, my dad's on his way over. We're supposed to go find something to do now that we're not hiking. And so I had my wife, I was like, you know what? Put me in a calf slicer. Like, yeah. If we need to open the knee up, then, like, put me in a calf slicer. And so she did that, and I was like, you know what? Just go. Just freaking hammer this thing down. And I'm dying. I'm like, oh. So I started having her, like, pull, like, do, like, traction, like, pull the knee away and, like, turn the ankle out. Yep. And, man, she worked on it for so long. And I was like, just stop. Like, okay, we're done. You got to stop. And I laid there in bed for about 10 more minutes. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go hobble into the shower. And I stood up out of bed. My leg just dropped and went straight. And I was like, oh. And I walked away. And, like, we're both like kind of in tears, and like I'm like, oh crap, I can walk. Like it's a miracle. Yeah. And so man, we hiked that whole week, felt great, no problems. That's crazy. And I actually I taught a seminar down. Do you know David Riley? Yeah, I did podcast. Okay, yeah, I started training with Dave, man. It was my first class at Highlander. It was nice. So yeah, I taught a seminar down at Dave's Undisputed down there. And man, like midway through, I'm like, all right guys, let's take a quick break. And I turned to grab my phone because I was keeping time on my phone. I turned to grab it, and my freaking meniscus folds in. I was like, oh, no. And so I unwrap, and I've got it wrapped. I've got braces on it. And so I take all the stuff off, and my wife, AJ, she, like, calf slicers me, and I feel it click back. I was like, oh, man, so good. So I continue the seminar, and then the very last set I'm teaching, I go to, like, just barely move my leg and do an arm bar, and it freaking folds in again. And I was like, oh, no. And so I finished the seminar, finished all the pictures and stuff. And then, man, she had to work on it forever. And I've got, like, Dave over there, like, working on it. Yeah. Finally, we got it. And I was like, so we were supposed to go hiking again that day afterwards. And I was like, let's just go home. Like, I don't want to hike today.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I had to wait like 6 weeks before surgery.
Really?
And it folded in, I think, 12 or 13 times over that 6-week period. But yeah, they ended up going in, and they thought it was a full ACL. Like, they're like preparing for ACL reconstruction and to repair the meniscus.
Right.
And they were like, you're going to be out for a solid year. So like, I had like all my coaches and stuff, like, guys, here's the classes you're going to teach, here's doing what. Like, we planned on me not being there for a year.
Right.
And so I go into surgery, I wake up, and she's like, hey, you're so not the doctor, like the nurse or whatever. She's like, your ACL is completely intact. It looks great. And yeah, they just they removed like 70% of your meniscus. And I was like, okay. And she's like, so you're off for 2 months. I was like, sweet, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I talked to the doctor. I went back to the doctor and looked, and he gave me pictures. I'm like, my knee looks really good, doesn't it? You know, 'cause I've been doing research online, and he's like showing me my bones and my other like cartilage and stuff. And I was like, that looks good, right? Like, I'm not mistaken. Like, that looks good. He goes, dude, I cannot believe how good your knee looks. Yeah. He's like, your meniscus was complete hamburger.
Right. You kept every time you would probably pop it out, it would just tear even more and damage it even more.
But yeah, so the bucket handle tear actually went from, you know, the back of the inside of my knee. Uh-huh. So but it went all the way over to the front outside, and then there was a split dead up the middle. So I just have my outer backside of the knee, there's just a little bit left in there.
Yeah.
But man, I'll tell you what, my knee's not felt this great in 10 years. It feels super good. It's wonderful. But I know in 10 years I'm going to be all arthritic and hopefully come up with something.
And that's that's kind of one of those things you got to take with a grain of salt, because I mean, just talking to you, you've had some insane recoveries almost. You kind of heal, kind of like Wolverine or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's it's not typical. Usually nothing is without consequence. So if you have surgery to remove tissue in your knee that was supposed to be there, then other parts of that knee have to take more force. And so it does lead to arthritic changes and stuff, but you never know, man. Some people, your knee would pop in and out, and that could have been terrible for some people. You were able to actually get the meniscus to fold back into position, and you were actually able to walk on. So I don't know. I mean, you never know. If you take care of your knees and also look at the impact, jiu-jitsu can be kind of higher impact, but also can be, you are torquing the knees and stuff. But that being the case, there's a lot of people with screwed up knees that can still, train pretty well.
Yeah. And, I'm not running. I'm not doing these giant jumps and stuff like that. Right. So, I feel pretty good about it. And, 10 years from now, who knows what'll be around. They're doing so much stuff with stem cells.
Right. Have you read about
even
that
different implants and stuff? Yeah, a little bit. Actually, my wife was talking to a girl who does jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And she said that she had 2 stem cell shots. One was her own, and one was actually an embryonic stem cell. Right. Which I didn't even know they were doing that in the U.S. right now.
California.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I knew she was West Coast somewhere. But she said she has an autoimmune disease on top of everything. But with the 2 shots, said it healed her meniscus, PCL, and ACL and she was off for 9 months.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, actually, I think I think I'm mistaken. I think it's in Vegas. There's Joe Rogan always talks about this guy, Dr. Roddy McGee, and they do a lot of embryonic stem cells because those cells can only turn into a select number of things, so they're less likely to be cancerous, and so they're almost safer, quote unquote. They can't turn into too much bad shit. So, but Conor McGregor had an 80% ACL tear, they said, which is insane. That's usually requires surgical repair, and they said he had stem cells and they healed.
Wow,
I mean,
that's
again,
crazy.
You got to be a certain age, diet. You got to be in a certain type of health. You can't be just super out of shape and poor diet and have diabetes and all that stuff. I think there's there's a point of no return where that stuff's not going to help you, you know. But I think like for somebody that's younger and active, your body's kind of used to that sort of thing. So I've seen great things with it. I've read a lot of really good stuff as well. Something for your labrum. You talked about your shoulder, man. I've heard, and the labrum is not really. It's kind of like your cartilage in your knee, you know, in the meniscus. It's kind of similar to that. You know,
right.
It's not going to heal very well, and if it's torn, it's going to continue to kind of your shoulder can pop and dislocate and all that stuff. So. That could be something to try. Even your neck. I mean, look at injections into your neck. I don't know if that's something they do, but it's got to be.
I've definitely thought about it, especially for the shoulder. You know, like, well, it was funny because when I hurt my shoulder, so basically it was no gi pants 2015, and I was like, I'm gonna ride this knee out for another year, and I want to do like Master World. Like I had a couple tournaments. I was like, I want to do Master Worlds. I want to do no gi pants because I had a good showing at no gi pans. I had a match that I didn't feel I lost, that I was not awarded the match.
Were you against a Brazilian guy?
I don't know. I don't know what he is.
What people say.
It was what it was, man. It was honestly like I honestly, and not to take anything away from him, man. It was a great match. It was an exciting match. But I think the referee awarded advantages to the wrong person.
Oh.
And I think it was just something. It was a simple mistake on the referee's part.
Gotcha.
And I could be totally off base, but
you've repped a few. You repped a few tournaments in your day. You know, you would probably know the rules fairly well, right?
A few tournaments, yeah.
Yeah.
I really think it was just an honest mistake on the referee's part. And that put that guy into the final, and he ended up losing, and I think the guy in the final my style would have let me win.
Yeah.
And I talked to other guys that had fought that guy in tournaments, and they're like, yeah, you would have smoked him.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go wreck that tournament next year. And but I was out for 6 months with my shoulder, so I go in, you know, as soon as I get back home, like I couldn't wipe my butt. I mean, it was horrible. Like, I mean, I did. I just used my left hand, which was
messy,
awkward. Yeah, it was crazy. But so like I go to this, you know, I see the surgeon, and he's like, "Oh, you need surgery."
Right.
And I was like, man, you're not gonna just throw me under the knife that quick. And he's like, "No, man, you need surgery." Like, I said, "Well, how long will I be out?" And he's like, "Oh, 6 months."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, man, look, like my knee's real bad. I need knee surgery." He's like, "Well, your knee surgery will probably be out a month or 3 months, excuse me."
Right.
And I was like, so 5 to 6 with my shoulder, and then like 3 to 5 with my knee. I was like, no. I was like, can you do them both at the same time? He's like, no, we can't do that. So I was like, well, I know I need knee surgery. I've needed it for years and years and years. So like that's going to take precedence. And I said, well, if I get surgery, I'm out for 6 months. I said, what if I just do rehab on it? And he goes, oh, it'll probably stop hurting after about 6 months. So I was like, okay, well, then. So I did like the little band exercises, and I just rolled with like holding my gi with that arm, you know, and it made a lot of my chokes way better with my left arm, and so it kind of paid off. But it definitely sucked. And then, like I said, it's been up and down. Like I was supposed to do a tournament in January, like a big invite tournament.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. I felt good, man. My rolling was on, and then it's like my shoulder just got terrible, to the point where I couldn't pick it up at all.
Was there anything that caused it?
Not that I know of. It just got like I had a lot of inflammation in my whole body, and my diet overall is pretty good. Like I don't eat a lot red meat almost ever, maybe like once a month. Don't really do dairy. I don't do processed foods much. You know, just I eat pretty clean, cleaner than your average person for sure. And, drink plenty of water. Like, like I said, never had alcohol in my life. Like, don't use any kind of drugs. Like,
you've been in a sauna for like 2 hours, so that must be.
Yeah.
I'm like,
this is not on, by the way.
Oh, okay. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah,
man.
no.
You've been there for a while. We might be.
I actually, man, anytime I feel bad, like if I feel like I'm starting to get sick, I'll come down here and freaking turn this bad boy on for a couple hours. And I got the flu really bad. Like, what was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Like the worst flu I've ever had in my life. I couldn't even hardly keep my eyes open. I couldn't breathe. And I came down here and I was like, I'm committing to 3 hours And man, I threw
Holy crap!
I threw like shorts on and sweatpants and a couple shirts and a hoodie, and freaking first hour felt pretty decent. Second hour was horrible. And then third hour, I was barely conscious. Like, I was just laying there asleep. My wife kept coming down, like, you breathing? Like, yeah, I'm good. But, yeah, man, after 3 hours, like, I could breathe. I could open my eyes. My headache was gone. Like,
Really?
Felt great. But,
James, man, I've kept you on for a little while, man. I appreciate your time. I kind of, if we can, I'd like to continue maybe another time. If you got,
sure,
there's
man.
a lot of stuff I didn't get to touch on, man.
Okay.
I'd like to maybe talk about just like your plans, like how you've been training since you've gotten a little older.
Okay, yeah.
I want to talk about the ego, just because that's really, for me in this area, it's been one of the tournaments that I have some of my best memories at the ego, man. Like
that's awesome, man.
It really is. I remember. I mean, it's the first tournament I ever did, you know, and I was so proud to, like, I'd never done wrestling or anything like that, and it was just crazy to me. And you guys always do a pretty awesome job. And, you know, I've been there with Chewy when you did the black belt invite, and so I want to talk about that. I think that just interests me with the way, you know, kind of tournaments have exploded. And you've been around forever doing tournaments. Now a lot of these tournaments are coming up and getting all this popularity. I just want to kind of hear your opinion on running tournaments and stuff. And your wife trains as well. I think I've met her at some. She kind of helps run the tournaments and stuff.
Yeah.
So
No, she doesn't help run the tournament. She runs the tournament.
Yeah. So I
do
kind
the
of want
easy
to touch
part.
on that and like running a gym and balancing work life and, you know, relationships and all that stuff. Because it's, for me, I've got a kid and I have another one on the way, about a month away, and so it's kind of the whole balance thing is very, it's unique because, you know, being able to train for 20 years is, to me, is amazing. I've been training about 8 or 9, I think about 8 years, but man, it's just, to be able to do that consistently is really, it's hard. I think everybody, if you can train consistently, I think you can probably get to black belt, I assume. I mean, for the most part, if you do it long enough,
should be able to,
I guess. But I don't know, man. I just want to know kind of your, and you've got some killers at your gym. I've gone against them. And I one of the guys I think won Master Worlds last year.
What's your weight? About 180?
Middle, like 175, 178.
Joel Blanton?
No, not Joel.
No?
He is
What's he look like? Black guy?
Yeah.
Nick Hyde.
Yeah, Nick, dude. He's the nicest guy, too, man. And I went against him. I've gone against him 3 times. He's beat me every time. One of the strongest dudes I've ever felt.
Dude, I'll tell you what, Nick's about 42, 43.
Yeah, unreal. He's in incredible shape.
Man, he's such an athlete.
Yeah.
The thing a lot of people don't know, like you've met him in jiu-jitsu tournaments, right?
Yeah.
So he got second at Master Worlds 2 years ago.
I thought he won.
And so as a blue belt, he got second. He had 6 matches, and we thought he only had 5. Like when he won his like semifinal, we thought he was in the final. Like we thought that was it, and so he kind of like let it, you know, like he turned tournament mode off.
Yeah, he let it down.
And then they're like, "Oh man, no, you got one more." Like we looked at the bracket wrong.
Wow.
So and then he lost on a takedown. So he got his purple, and then he came back next year and went 6-0 and won purple belt. But man, the guy, he's phenomenal striker.
He was in I don't think he was in my division. He was, we were in the same. I did Master Worlds in 2016, but he's older. He was an older category.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But I remember seeing him there, and I competed against him. My last purple belt tournament I did, I actually lasted almost like pretty much the whole time. He got me into some kind of arm lock or something, but it was.
He's got a weird style.
Man, he's another level, man. His grip, I was like, holy shit. Incredible.
Yeah.
Super nice guy, man. I mean, just the nicest guy. We remember each other every time, you know, I'm doing an ego. You know, if I see him there, man, we chat. So, but freaking killer. Absolutely. So, but man, I appreciate your time, dude. Is there anybody where, if they want to train with you, or where they can reach you at, how can they contact you?
Oh man, it's super easy, and I'll tell you, like, we love having guests. We always love having visitors. I never charge a drop-in fee or anything. Man, you can reach me at really emails james@ibjja.com. My school's number is 317-946-9447. You can always call the academy and we'll set something up. You can hit me up on Facebook. It's James Clingerman. Last name's Clingerman.
Awesome. What's your gym called, James?
It's real easy. It's Indiana Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy.
There you go.
So IBJJA.
And then you run the EGO, the Extreme Grappling Open. You've been doing that forever.
Yep.
You guys have any tournaments coming up? I think you have the old, like the throwback EGO coming up.
Yeah, the throwback on August, I believe it's August 6th.
Awesome.
So, yeah, we do, it's no time limit. You fight till submission, obviously, or first to 15 points.
That's awesome.
And so that's always a fun one.
Oh, the other thing I was going to ask you, I think you made a loop choke video or something instructional.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite submission of all time.
Awesome. Do you have it?
No, I don't.
I'll send it to you. All right.
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask you about loop chokes, man. It's kind of what I'm. People don't like to let me get cross collar at the gym. They don't want me to get that grip. But it's awesome. Cool. I don't know why I started getting good at that submission. I don't know. But I was curious. I was like, you got a loop choke instruction. I was like, I'm interested in that. So
DVD or download?
Oh, I don't care, man. Can people still buy it? Is it
available? Oh yeah. So I was gonna say one of our other businesses, thefighthub.com.
There you go.
And we've got tons of gear, like multi jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, MMA gear from brands like Fuji, Gameness, Ring to Cage, Rev Gear, you name it. We also produce a lot of DVDs. Like actually, we're just getting ready to release. I just filmed 2 DVDs with Christian Wood-Manzi.
Yeah, he just competed against
Kyle Terra, yeah. And the thing people don't know about Christian, man, he's like 120 pounds. Like Kaio, as small as Kaio is, he still had like 20 pounds on Christian.
Yeah, dude, he's good. He's really good. I mean, Kaio's freaking top notch, but dude, they're both phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so hopefully the next couple of weeks we'll have a De La Hiva guard DVD.
That's awesome.
Out with him. Reverse De La Hiva's the next one coming out. I filmed a DVD with Marcel Gonçalves, who is a black belt under Cyborg.
That's awesome.
And Marcel runs Fight Sport down in Naples, Florida.
Yeah.
But so we've done quite a few. Did the Hinger team with Josh Hinger.
Yeah.
Who just double golded at U.S. Nationals, beat Keenan in the final of the heavyweight, and Hinger's like a middleweight, so he competes all over the place, man. He's also a master, and he's like smoking all these like young guys.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so we got a couple DVD download streaming products and stuff like that, and
so that's fighthub.com.
The Fight Hub, yeah.
Thefighthub.com. Got it. Awesome, dude. James, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. It's you've definitely been, one of the jiu-jitsu guys in this area for sure. It's awesome to get to talk to you, kind of pick your brain. I'd like to, get a little more information on kind of your jiu-jitsu philosophy and kind of where you see jiu-jitsu going, how it's progressing, where you see it developing to, and kind of all. I mean, I just have tons of questions. But I don't want to
for sure. Yeah, I don't want
to keep you super late, man. I appreciate the time.
Okay. We'll do it again.
Yeah, I'll touch base with you in a little bit, and we'll hopefully set something up in the future. So I appreciate it. Good luck with everything, and thanks for letting me kind of learn a little bit about you and telling us kind of what you're doing. So
yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Awesome, brother. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again to my guest, James Clingerman, for joining me on the podcast. Thank you guys for listening, and make sure to check out more podcasts on jujitsutherapist.com. Check out the YouTube channel for injury prevention tips and kind of exercises for keeping yourself healthy and on the mats. And make sure to subscribe, listen on iTunes, leave a review, and I appreciate the support, guys. We'll see you next time for another podcast.